so much information, it's kind of hard to zero in on just one aspect. All right. Deuteronomy chapter 19. All right. Quick reminder, have they gone in and conquered yet? No. So we're getting final instructions before they do that. Who's going to lead them when they go in? Joshua. How do you pronounce Joshua in Greek? Jesus. Americanized version of it, but yeah. Same word. Jehovah saves. So Moses is speaking to him. He's going to die in the next couple of weeks. So final instructions. So everything he's telling him is, again, when you go in, this is what you do. So 19:1. When the Lord thy God hath cut off the nations, whose land the Lord thy God giveth thee, and thou succeedest them, and dwellest in their cities and in their houses. All right, so that's a big, it's not going to happen. It will happen, but these are a series of things that are going to happen in the future. Cutting off the nations means you're going to win. The land that you're going to possess, it's given to you by God, which is important. You got to remember who's instructing you how to do what he wants you to do within that land. When you succeedest them, that means you're now installed. You've parceled it out. You've got ownership. You're dwelling in their cities and in their houses. Is that normal when you have warfare to go into, fully functional and built cities and dwellings? Normally, it's just ruin and chaos, and there's massive destruction. But the way God is going to arrange these campaigns, basically the armies are all going to come out of their cities and fight in two major battles, and they're going to destroy the bulk of them in two events, and then they'll just have a little bit of mop-up. But the end result is God's going to give them fully furnished, functional cities to dwell into. All right? So it's beyond just the conquering and defeating a major force. The way God does it is a miracle. It's miraculous. So he's telling us this is going to happen. You're going to cut them off. You're going to go into the land. You're going to succeed that people. They're not going to be there anymore. You're going to dwell in their houses and cities. At that time, you've got to do something. Verse 2. Thou shalt separate 3 cities for thee in the midst of thy land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee to possess it. All right, you are going to set apart 3 particular cities out of that land. This is God's instructions. You have to do it. And the rest of the chapter is going to be reminding them what is the purpose of these cities. Thou shalt prepare thee a way and divide the coast of the land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee to inherit, into 3 parts, that every man may flee thither. All right, so in addition to setting apart these cities for a particular purpose, you also have to make and maintain a road. All right, preparing a way, you've got to have the ability for people to quickly gain access to these cities. If you look at that map I texted to you, if you look on the western side, you'll see 3 cities. You'll have one in the south, one centrally located, and one in the north. There's a reason for that. If you're fleeing to these cities in a time of great need, you don't want it to be too far. And so that's why I said chop it into 3 parts and make sure you put one of these cities in each parts. So you've got the same on the eastern portion as well. They've actually already set aside 3 of these cities of refuge on this side of the river where they're currently camped. So that would be, if you look at your map, to the east. And the western side's where they've still got to go, and they're going to set apart them. So real practical, functional, makes sense. You want to put them where people can get to. So if you're in the far north, you don't have to run all the way across the country to find this place of refuge. So why do you need a place of refuge? What is the purpose for this city? Well, that's what we're going to get in verse 4. This is the case of the slayer. All right. Legal cases, your case files, right? This is the scenario in which you have a slayer, right? Thou shalt not kill, right? This slayer, that's the one who's killed. But this slayer has an opportunity to flee that he may live, right? So this is a very narrow circumstance for when someone has killed somebody else, that they are allowed to go to these cities and survive. So here's your terms. Whosoever killeth his neighbor ignorantly. whom he hated not in time past. Okay, so that's the target audience. You have someone who has accidentally killed somebody. Right? We're not talking about you laid in wait because you hated them. You're not talking about someone who knew better, because there's some language in Exodus about a man who knows that his ox has a habit of pushing people, goring people, and he didn't deal with it. Well, that's not this case. This is one there's genuinely an accident. Right? But somebody's still dead. Okay, so he didn't hate him in the past. He didn't do it on purpose. All right, fun law school thing. In criminal justice, when we were studying about murder, there's two components that you have to have in order to be culpable or guilty of murder. One is you have to perform the physical act, all right? And the other is you have to intend for the person to die. So we're looking at not only what happened, but what is your mental state and intents, the action and your intent. You have to have both of those for murder, because the word murder implies intentional slaying. In Georgia, we have another concept that you probably heard of. It's like manslaughter. Somebody's still dead, but you didn't intend them to die. And there are different standards based on whether you were reckless, like if you're drunk driving. That's not just without accident. You knew there's a greater possibility. Versus, here's our scenario. Here's one example. When a man goes into the wood with his neighbor to hew wood, and his hand fetcheth a stroke with an axe to cut down a tree, and the head slippeth from the helve. All right, somebody tell me, what's a helve? The handle. Yeah. All right, so you can imagine that. You see guys going out to work. You got your handle sitting on there, and then the handle flies off. It flies across, and it hits your buddy that you're working with. It lights upon his neighbor. All right, like the dove lit upon Jesus. Now, this is a little harder, right? It hit him. Oh, yeah, not the handle. The head of the axe. It lights upon his neighbor that he die. All right, it's pretty rough to have a flying axe head come at you. In that case, did the guy cutting wood with his neighbor have any desire for his neighbor to die? Was this something that he concocted a scheme? Right? It was just an accident. But his neighbor's still dead. And so that's the scenario where he has the ability, wherever he lives in the country, to start running to the closest city of refuge. He shall flee unto one of those cities and live, lest the avenger of blood pursue the slayer while his heart is hot and overtake him, because the way is long, and slay him. All right, so the avenger of blood, that would be the family members of the man who's dead. They have the right to go and seek justice against the one who's committed this crime. And so if they were to find him along the road, they would have the right to execute him. So this is your reason for not putting the cities too far away. You want them to be able to go and reach it safely. So if the way is too long and they slay him, whereas he was not worthy of death, inasmuch as he hated him not in time past. So without that mental state of desiring somebody's death, of intending it, even though someone's dead, you weren't worthy of being killed. Under the law, if that guy caught up with you, the avenger of blood, he had the right to execute you. But this is really someone who's innocent in a sense. His hands were clean, and that he wasn't intending someone to die. So God is providing for a place of safety. So that happens, your axe head flies off, you drop your handle, and you start hightailing it. Okay? Wherefore I command thee, saying, thou shalt separate 3 cities for the people. So immediately, once they're in there and they're occupied, they have to go ahead and set up these 3 cities. Later, which is what we're going to get in verse 8, if your nation gets even bigger, then you need to provide some more. Okay? You don't want the distance to ever be too far. So if the Lord thy God enlarge thy coast, as he has sworn unto thy fathers, and give thee all the land which he promised to give unto thy fathers, if thou shalt keep all these commandments to do them, which I've commanded this day, to love the Lord thy God, to walk ever in his way, then shalt thou add 3 cities more for thee besides these 3. So we've already got 3 on the far side of Jordan, the eastern side. The 2.5 tribes, they're already occupying. Their men are going to have to go and help with the conquering. As soon as you go in, you got to put in another 3. And then later, as your nation gets really big, because God had basically promised from a river that cuts off the land down towards Egypt all the way up to Euphrates, that's a big old chunk of land. So install another 3 cities later down the road. Why? That innocent blood be not shed in thy land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for inheritance, and so blood be upon thee. In verse 10, who is the innocent blood referring to? The accidental murderer. The guy who accidentally killed somebody. That's who's being described as the innocent blood. So if you obey God, you will have these cities available for that person who accidentally caused somebody's death. He's still described as an innocent person, and so by making way for him to go to this city for safety, you're preventing innocent blood from being slain in your land. There is some really strong language against innocents being slain. If you go over to chapter 21 and in verse 9, this is the case where you find someone who's dead and they don't know who murdered it. And so you got to go to the closest city, and everyone basically has to swear, we didn't put our hand upon it. But the idea is that they have to put away the guilt of innocent blood. And so that's not the one I really wanted. I think it's 2 Kings. Yeah, 2 Kings 21:16. I think this is about old Manasseh. 2 Kings 21 and verse 16. Manasseh was not a friendly king. He was pretty rebellious and idolatrous. So he did a ton of evil in provoking the Lord. But verse 16 says, moreover, Manasseh shed innocent blood very much, till he had filled Jerusalem from one end to another, besides his sin where he'd made Judah to sin in doing that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. So in addition to his idolatry sin, he was also a wicked king that would frequently execute and murder people who didn't deserve it. And there was a consequence when there was innocent people being murdered within the land. It's God saying that there's going to be, this judgment upon Israel for allowing that to happen. Modern day equivalent when we allow people to kill babies, right? It's not something that is ever going to be looked upon favorably. Yes?
I was listening to somebody, and they basically said that, and I've never thought of it this way. This was not like prison. I mean, these people were free to move around in these cities, right?
Yes. This is more like house arrest, but you were confined to the city.
That's what I thought. This person said, this is like going to jail. I mean, I don't really think it's like going to jail.
No. This is similar to the sentence that Solomon gave to the man that had cursed David, that you now are confined to Jerusalem. If you ever found outside the city walls, your life is forfeit. But no, there's really not much equivalent to prison in Scripture, because they just held them in ward just until their sentence was served. So this person would have the freedom of movement within any of these cities, could establish a life, and they'd have to stay there until the current high priest passed away. Don't know how long that would last, but you're thinking somewhere probably less than 50 years. Generally, the high priest would be an older individual. But all right, so God is preparing a place so that this person, because they've caused a murder, will be restricted to this area where they can be safe. He's describing them as innocent. Their hands are clean. They weren't intending to kill them. And it's also protecting the avengers of blood from slaying them as that innocent while their blood is hot, and so the the ideas, the passion and anger and fervor of the family members before they have a chance to calm down. All right. Now, this is a narrow scenario. So verse 11 says, "But if any man hate his neighbor, and lie in wait for him, and rise up against him, and smite him mortally, that he die, and fleeth into one of these cities," all right, this is no refuge for a murderer. And if you look in, I think it's Numbers 35, you learn that there are some things that rule out any possibility of being an accident. If you hit somebody with a sword, if you hit them with a tool, if you hit them with something that's designed to kill somebody, it's a pretty good indication you meant to do it, as opposed to just having to guess what they were thinking. So premeditation, was there a weapon in their hand? So Numbers 35 is a pretty expansive list of this scenario. So, but our scenario in verse 11 is really just dealing with, okay, someone you know that's a murderer, if they try to take advantage of this place of refuge, and they really don't meet the qualifications, well, then the elders of his city shall send and fetch him thence. The elders of his city are going to know what's happened, right? They're the ones, there's been a murder that's happened in our city. You fled over here. We're going to go, and we're going to bring you out of that city, and then we deliver you into the avenger of blood, that he may die. Okay, so this is not vigilante, just knee-jerk reactions. This is the civil or criminal proceeding that God has set forth so that the judgment would come down on the wrongdoer. So the method was the elders would come, they'd make that determination. This person's worthy of death. You turn them over to the person who's entitled and required to execute him, which is the man's family. So, deliver into the hand of the avenger of blood that he may die. Thine eye shall not pity him, but thou shalt put away the guilt of the innocent blood from Israel, and it may go well with thee. All right, again, here you've got an intentional murder. The innocent blood is referring to the victim. Is there any way they can let that murderer go and Israel be okay? No. Well, what if I promise never to do it again? What if I say I'm sorry? What if I pay you? Is there any ransom that person could pay in order to spare their life? No. And you get that explicitly over in Numbers 35. Now, you contrast that with the guy who knew that his ox was prone to gore people and didn't put it up. If the family members of that dead person wanted to accept a ransom, that would be okay. So here you've got negligence or recklessness in not keeping his dangerous animal pinned up, which is possible to buy your life with a ransom, versus intentional murder, which it is not. And the only way to cleanse the nation of Israel was to have that one who killed the innocent person to be put to death, to suffer the judgment. Okay?
So it would be an act of a person, not an animal. In other words, if the person, there's a third party involved, right?
Which scenario?
In the first.
With the ox?
With the ox.
Yeah, so the ox has hurt somebody in the past, right, and now they've killed somebody.
So that's the third. But in this scenario, it's one person.
It's one murderer against one innocent person. Yeah, and the family of the innocent person cannot spare the murderer. They don't have that authority. Let's just flip over to Numbers 35 for a minute. Let's see if we can't grab a couple other nuggets. Numbers 35. So down in verse 16, I alluded to how you'd know some of the scenarios that it was murder and not a accidental death. If he smite him with an instrument of iron, all right. So if you've got something you use for farming or blacksmithing or whatever tools, and you hit somebody with that, you can't say it was an accident. All right? You're wielding it as a weapon. Verse 16 of chapter 35. If he smites him with an instrument of iron so that he die, he's a murderer. the murderer shall surely be put to death. If he smite him with a throwing stone, what's the purpose of a throwing stone? Hit somebody. It's like if you hit somebody with a bullet. What's the purpose of a bullet? Hitting somebody with it, right? And that's what, a sling was back then, reaching out and touching somebody at range with the idea of causing harm. So if you hit him with a throwing stone that he may die, and he dies, he's a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. If he smite him with a hand weapon of wood, all right, so you got a club, that he may die, and he die, he's a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. The revenger of blood himself shall slay the murderer. When he meeteth him, he shall slay him. All right, so that's the instructions. The revenger of blood, that close family member who's entitled to, he's required to execute the justice.
So when did the American society or whatever society come to life without parole or life?
This is the laws that were God put into effect for the nation of Israel. And we're talking 1,500 years before Jesus' birth where we're considering this being implemented. Our system was developed by men, many with humanist ideals and philosophies, and it varies with the society. I can't tell you exactly when we developed life without parole, but you go back 100 years, the sentences for horse thievery were a lot more sudden. It was hangings and things. But part of that gets into the idea of the possibility of reforming people. Obviously life without parole doesn't help that, but the underlying philosophy is actually that people are inherently good, which is contradictory to Scripture and total depravity. So, not making a criticism on our system, just trying to teach you what God had set up for this nation at this time. Yep. So Numbers 35. Let's see if there's any other nuggets I want to pull out of there. If he thrust him suddenly without enmity, or have cast upon him anything without lying in wait, or any stone wherewith the stone may die, seeing him not, and cast it upon him, and he died, and he was not his enemy, nor sought his harm, then the congregation shall judge between the slayer and the avenger of blood according to the congregation. Okay. So, here you've used those weapons, but you didn't intend to. So you're casting a stone at a bird and your neighbor walks by and you didn't see him and you hit him. Just because you use the weapon does not always be determinative. Sometimes you got to diligently inquire into the facts. Just like if you were to fire a gun up in the air, and what goes up comes down. Doesn't mean you meant to kill your neighbor. Should you have done it? Probably not. But hating them, desiring it, premeditation, those factors were led to a capital offense and execution. The others, where it was in doubt, they had to, the congregation had to go and they had to make a determination whether or not he was going to be able to live or not. If they say this was an accident, he's an innocent, you go and you stay in the city. It says you have to stay there until the death of the high priest. But if you're ever found outside of that city, you decide to go visit your family members in your hometown, the avenger of blood would have the right to execute justice then. Because he should have remained in the city. So he's disobeyed. So he's brought his own blood upon him by disobeying.
There's multiple cities,
yeah,
and they're safe havens for themselves from each other. Is that what I want to say? Because we don't have a globe where you can go country to country. So you got to have the ability to still have resource, but be given the opportunity to live. So is it like safe zones where like you mess up a little bit over here, you can run over there? As long as you stay over there and don't go back, you're kind of okay?
Kind of. It's
and that way, because if not, we would have never got 8 billion people on Earth. We all murdered each other 1,500 years ago.
So this is only within the nation of Israel. And it's only 3 cities on this side of the river and 3 cities on that side.
might be wrong, it just seems like it's kind of like a plan of God's to keep the people together versus.
I mean, there's going to be tons of cities.
Yeah.
There's going to be hundreds of cities, but these particular ones are designated as, yes, this is the safe zone. Like when you're playing tag, where do you want? You want to get to base because you're safe.
Yeah.
They can't get you. That's what it's breaking into. So you have an opportunity to survive what otherwise would be a capital situation.
It's just hard to fathom for me because we live in the United States of America, and Israel is like the size of New Jersey.
Mhm.
So you're not really, it just feels, I don't know.
It's within running distance, right? You're going to be somewhere within 30 or 40 miles where you can get there in an emergency. But yeah, it's different. We can't take our experiences and overlay them very easily. Well, you've got to be running faster than the Avenger too, which is part of the reason why they had to maintain a road. So you're not.
Yeah, I just you talk about the witnesses and stuff.
Yeah.
I just feel like there would have been with the accidental deaths. I get murder, I get manslaughter, but like you actually walked out in front of me while I was getting ready to shoot the deer. I feel like we could collectively come together as a family and understand that hey, stuff happens. You know what I mean? Especially in the response of the person who is the person who shed the blood, like the distraught, the remorse of what happened in terms of the accident. And
Yes.
was that even possible, or was no? You have to flee.
The place of safety was given for you that you would be entitled to live if you went there and you served. So there's a consequence because someone died. The consequence is you don't have to die if you go to the one place that he set aside for you. He's made it within reasonable distance. You go there, you stay there as long as he said to, and then you can go about your life.
It's a lot better than life without parole.
Right. I mean, this is, ankle monitoring thing within a city, which is, a fairly merciful response because, most societies, you've killed my family member. I mean, Hatfields and McCoy, what are we going to do? We're going to kill you, whether it was justified or not. And so he's putting a restraint on that desire for those family members to get vengeance and making the civil laws protect someone.
I got one more question.
Sure. No, you're
fine. If I'm the Avenger,
Mm-hmm.
do I have the option to forgive and just not avenge, or is it the law of our nation? So one of us has to avenge this.
So for a murderer, you do not have the option. That was required. For someone who's fleeing to a city of refuge, you don't have to run very fast. Right? There's nothing that says you have to catch up to them. So I think you are allowed to show mercy. But that also means the rest of your family, who also has that right, would have to have the same opinion.
Oh, okay. It's like more like it's a deterrent. It's checks and balances. And if it does happen, though, you got a shot.
You have an opportunity, and part of this is putting that onus on the nation to obey God to make sure that these opportunities are there, that it's smooth, it's able to get there. You've got a way, everyone knows where it is at, and then when you're there, you're actually safe and protected. And then if you leave that sanctuary, you've disobeyed, and so if the Avenger gets you, it's not him shedding innocent blood anymore. Your disobedience to God is now you forfeited. So. Yeah. I mean, one was Hebron. That's where Caleb. I mean, so these are big, major cities. I mean, you'd have the ability to work and earn money and to survive, as normal as you could. I mean, it's kind of like banished for a time. But yeah. So.
Was it known to everyone in that city? Like, my thought was with this Scarlet letter, did people know,
Yeah, I'd say so, because they would have to make a determination when you got there. If the Avenger comes knocking on the city gate, hey, Elliot's in here. We know what he done did. We've investigated. We've determined that he is qualified to remain here. We're not going to turn him over to you. So no, I don't think you could sneak in and fly under the radar. Oh. Okay. So verse 14, seemingly a very different topic, and it kind of is, but Thou shalt not remove thy neighbor's landmark, which they of old time have set in thine inheritance, which thou shalt inherit in the land that the Lord thy God giveth thee to possess it. All right, we've been going through Proverbs. There's quite a number of references to this. Well, let's state the obvious. Why would someone be tempted to shift around a landmark? Right, the landmark is what makes the border between your property and your neighbor's property. And so a big old oak tree, maybe that's hard to move around, but if the landmark is the squared out rock that we put there between the two, and I just kind of pull that rock 20 feet to the right, I do that every year. Well, time it gets to my grandkids, I've got a lot more field. Who's giving you the land? God. And so when you're taking your neighbor's land, you're stealing something that God has given to that family, right? The fathers did not have the right to sell their land. They couldn't take it away from their children. They could only lease it for up to that 50-year mark, and then it was going to go back to them. And so those landmarks stayed for a long time. Now, if you didn't have any kids and you've got a cousin over here who he's going to be your heir anyway, and he wants to buy the land, okay, that's fine, and he can combine it. That's the right of being the redeemer, the near kinsman. But in general, we're not talking about parcels getting swapped around between people with all this ownership. And so maintaining those boundary lines year after year and generation after generation, it's important, right? Because those are the parcels. So this is an inheritance given by God, a gift from God to his people. Don't try and steal it from your neighbors. And that's why there's so many admonitions about not going after the widows and orphans, because who is in the least position to be able to protect their claim to that land, to fight it, to be able to go to the elders? Really, who's easy pickings, right? But who's also going to be their protector? God, right? He gave them the land. Question?
I got lots of questions.
Okay, well, hit me with one.
No, I'm trying to pick and choose them, man.
Okay, you're fine. You're fine.
Distract everyone else.
No, you're fine. All right. So that's all we get from right there. So this is about property disputes, all right, and honesty, and not stealing God's gift to another individual. All right, so verse 15, we have the minimum requirements before someone can be put to death for an act. One witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity, so not just death, but any crime, or for any sin, in any sin that he sinneth. But at the mouth of 2 witnesses, or at the mouth of 3 witnesses, shall the matter be established. All right, so you've got to have a minimum, right? Legal term is corroboration. You have to have 2 people saying the same story in order to establish a wrongdoing. What could be a possible reason for that? Well, that could be a reason for having a false witness, but just in general, if you've got 1v1, the man, he said, she said, you have really irritated me, and now I'm going to go tell the sheriff that you've been lighting dumpster fires and everything. Right? But if I've got 2 people, we've seen him doing this, and better yet, 3, then the odds of it being true go up, or the odds of discovering a conspiracy between the 2 go up. And God has some really strong words against bearing false witness. Like literally you are testifying to something as being true. In fact, that's in Proverbs of one of the 6 things that he hates. God hates things. He hates the lying lips. And then, yea, 7 are abomination unto him, the one that's bearing false witness against his neighbor. So, talk about our deterrent effect of our criminal justice system. If you lie in court today, contempt of court, maybe fine, maybe a little bit of jail time. Here's the standard for if you lied then. If a false witness rise up against a man to testify against him of that which is wrong, then both the men between whom the controversy is shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges, which shall be in those days, And the judges shall make diligent inquisition. All right, so you've got a pretty high standard of care in how they've got to investigate. And behold, if the witness be a false witness and have testified falsely against his brother, then shall ye do unto him as he thought to have done unto his brother. So shalt thou put the evil away from among you. So, the crime that the one man was being accused with, whatever the punishment would have been if the people had believed and he had been found guilty, that's what the lying witness is going to receive. Okay? Now, there's, standards in punishment where it matches the crime, right? So if I were to punch somebody so hard that their eye failed, the consequence under the law was that as the wrongdoer, I would lose the benefit of my eye. All right? People make fun of that, eye for an eye and the whole world is blind. It's the justice being returned to the person for the wrongdoing. And so if someone is telling a slander against me, yeah, I saw him knock out so-and-so's eye and so-and-so's not around anymore, you have to put out his eye. And the judges determine this guy is lying, then what he wanted to happen to me out of vengeance and spite is what he would receive as his consequence. So it's a pretty strong deterrent from bearing false witness. Whatever you're trying to subject someone else to do, right? You're trying to have the justice system do your dirty work and hurt somebody. Whatever you were trying to subject them to is what you have now brought upon your own head. So once that has been executed upon that individual for lying, it says that's how you're putting away the evil from among you, right? That evil of that lie, it had to be addressed by meting out that judgment. You put it among you. And there's a benefit of others, that those which remain shall hear and fear, and shall henceforth commit no more any such evil among you. So someone else who is tempted, well, Brother Parrish has really gotten under my skin. I'm gonna say he's done something and lopped off somebody's hand. I don't want to see his hand lopped off. Oh man, that guy who was a false witness, he just lost an eye or was put to death because of a capital crime. Maybe I won't do that. Maybe I'll do something else, but not that. So you have that deterrent effect that they will see that this law that God has given, that they were abiding by it and there were consequences, and that they would not commit that evil. And thine eye shall not pity. Do you have the ability to forgive that person who bore false witness? But life shall go for life. So if someone was trying to set you up for murder and a death penalty, they would have to be put to death, right? And you may feel like, well, he didn't kill anybody. He just said something. You can't pity. What was he trying to do? He was trying to accomplish murder through the hands of the judges. So he is an attempted murderer, and for that, his consequence is death. So you shall not pity. Life shall go for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. So the punishment is not, well, you've knocked out my eye, now you're going to die, but rather it's equal to the damage that you were trying to cause, that you're receiving. So, criminal justice 101 in Israel. Questions?